Has the New York Giants veteran quarterback saga potentially taken a step closer to being resolved? We'll take a look at that, plus some draft wins and more, coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, a huge welcome in to my Blue Crew community members, to my everydayers, to my newcomers, and everybody in between. Much appreciation to those of you who choose to spend part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $20 off your first purchase. All right, folks, on today's episode, and let me give you the timestamp since, again, news can turn in a New York minute. It is 4:00 on Wednesday, March 19th. I'm sorry. So 4:00, March 19th, Wednesday. And this is the latest that I have for you coming up on this show. We're going to start off with an update on the quarterback situation and if the Giants are maybe a step closer to getting this resolved one way or another. So I'll talk about those developments and what I think it means for the Giants moving forward. Then we'll go to segment 2 and talk a little bit about some draft wins, just some things that I had picked up and some thoughts that I have on what's been told to me and rumors and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that. And then finally, where do the Giants need to devote premium draft assets to fill remaining needs on the roster besides quarterback? Obviously, that's one of them. But we'll talk about the other spots and why they are still very much a premium position that warrant premium draft picks. So that's today's schedule of topics. Let's get into it. All right, starting with the quarterback. Are you guys as tired of this story as I am? Because, already make a decision, sign somebody, and let's get on with it. But here's the latest. Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network reported very early on Wednesday morning that the Minnesota Vikings are intending to move forward with J.J. McCarthy, that they had actually gotten some phone calls about trading him, which they're not going to do. And for right now, for right now at any rate, they are not interested in bringing in Aaron Rodgers, that they're going to look to bring in a potential different backup. Now, I want to stop right there because I just want to focus on the right now verbiage that was in that report. Right now means as of that moment when the news was relayed to Pelissero. Okay, so here's the thing. J.J. McCarthy, as everybody knows, is recovering from knee surgery that cost him his rookie season. It is March 19th, again, as I record this. The season doesn't start until September, and while there is reason to believe that J.J. McCarthy will make a full and complete recovery, you never know if there's going to be a setback. Setbacks do happen with different types of injuries. We saw Deshaun Watson in Cleveland had a setback after, there was optimism he might be ready for 2025. Now it looks like he won't be. So the for now qualifier, I think you had to include that. And I found that interesting because, again, things could change. But as of right now, it looks like, if this thing were to come to a head, Minnesota is out on Aaron Rodgers. That would leave Pittsburgh and the Giants as his two remaining options, or he could decide to retire. Okay, so that being said, let's talk quickly about Cleveland and how they factor into this. So Cleveland is actually in competition, if you will, for Russell Wilson, who is also on the Giants list of potential backup quarterbacks. I personally think, the impression I get is that Russell Wilson might be a little bit more ahead of Aaron Rodgers than I think initially thought. And I'm just wondering if that's the case because, look, you see what's going on with Rodgers, how he's taking his time, how he's operating on his time. Um, there have been reports that he may drag this out until the week of the draft, which, it's just, who needs that? I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier on an earlier show this week. The off-season program is starting next month. And while it is a voluntary program, wouldn't you want to have your veteran quarterback come in and be settled so that he could start watching film with his receivers and start getting to know guys and all that stuff? I mean, again, I know it's voluntary, but it's such a big period to build camaraderie. And with Rodgers continuing to drag his feet, I mean, look, the Vikings aren't interested in you as of right now. So either commit to the Steelers, commit to the Giants, commit to retiring, and be done with it. Why does this have to continue to drag? I mean, are you hoping, like I said, that maybe, the Vikings will change their mind and come back and say, oh, JJ McCarthy's recovery just not quite where we want it to be, and we better have somebody on board. But even if that's the case, ultimately, the Vikings are going to want to commit or have or are planning to commit to JJ McCarthy when he is fully healthy. So a veteran quarterback going there is probably going to play at best for a handful of games until McCarthy's ready. So, I mean, does Rodgers really want that? Who knows? I've given up trying to figure out what he wants or how he's thinking, which is I'm sure how he prefers it to be. But all I know from a Giants perspective, just get a quarterback in here. Work it out with Russell Wilson. There was a report last year when Russell Wilson made a stopover with the Giants that there was great interest that he wanted to join the Giants, but he also wanted a chance to compete for a job. Well, now that job is available. So I got to wonder what the holdup is with Russell Wilson. Is it the Giants are just waiting for Aaron Rodgers? Is money involved? I mean, is it a combination of all of the above? I don't know the answer to that. But, you know, I got to think if you're the Giants, I mean, how much longer can you wait? And I know there was a report Mike Garafolo said on I think it was Good Morning Football on the NFL Network. He said that the Giants are willing to be patient with Aaron Rodgers. Just at some point, you got to do what's best for you and stop catering to these other guys. And like I said yesterday, this is so out of character for Joe Shane. It's like you're running a business. So either tell somebody, look, I need an answer by such, this date, or I'm moving on. I mean, you start letting guys hold you up like this. What does that say about you? That just gives off the impression that you're desperate. And, maybe the Giants are. I wouldn't blame them if they are, but, do you have to put that on display if that's the case? So anyway, that's the latest on the quarterback situation. I mentioned Cleveland has an interest in Carson Wentz, which could potentially edge Russell Wilson back to the Giants. Maybe that's what they're waiting on. Maybe they're waiting for that door to close. Although, could Pittsburgh be in the picture for Russell Wilson? I don't think he could close the door there, but you never know. That's why things change so quickly, and you got to stay on top of all this stuff. But that's the latest thoughts that I have on the situation and how this is evolved. And I'm sure we'll talk about it again until this is resolved one way or another for the Giants. But anyway, that's the latest on that. Now, coming up next, we're going to turn our attention to the draft. So that's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts who are ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Upwork offers fast and easy hiring. Posting a job is free and simple and within a day with multiple candidates to choose from, giving you options to find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Hey, Giant fans, imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. And that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks curation makes it easy to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I just checked the Game Time app just a little while ago to see what the deals are on some concerts that I'm interested in attending. And there are just amazing deals out there, not just on concerts, but also on sporting events that are coming up. And Game Time offers super deals and the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a seat in the same section and row for less elsewhere. With seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On to get $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On, spelled out LOCKEDON, to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We are still 5 days a week. And as was the plan last week, if we have breaking news over the weekend, if the quarterback situation gets resolved, I'll be here for you with a show. I won't leave you hanging. I wouldn't do that to you. So we're just finishing up the first week of the second phase of free agency, but we're going to put free agency on the back burner for the time being. And we're going to talk more about the draft in this segment. So I want to talk about some things that I heard and also some, pieces of the puzzle that I've started to put together based on what I think is going to happen. All right. So a good source told me that the Giants have a preference of the two quarterbacks in this draft, that Cam Ward is the guy they like a little bit better than Shedeur Sanders. Not by much, but Cam Ward kind of has a little bit of an edge there. Now, obviously, Ward is probably going to be the first quarterback, the first player off the board in next month's draft. The Titans, they want a ton of assets to move out of the first round. The Titans, they want a ton of draft assets if they're going to move out of that first overall pick. That haul that they're looking for includes multiple first round picks, right? So not just a swap of this year's pick, but next year's pick. And then also a third rounder, I think, is what I had seen as part of the deal that they were reportedly looking for. The Giants, ladies and gentlemen, are not going to give up the first round pick in 2026. It's just not happening. All right. You're talking about a difference of 800 points between the first overall pick and the third overall pick, according to the NFL draft trade chart. All right. So what the Titans are reportedly looking for is just too rich for a team like the Giants. And again, who could blame the Titans for wanting a huge haul? They've got multiple needs. And if they can get that, if they could capitalize on the team's desperation, why not? All right. So then if Cam Ward is off the board, one other thing, actually, I want to mention, and credit to Josina Anderson on this. She had mentioned that the Titans have actually, or reportedly gotten calls about Will Levis. And also that the fact that the Titans haven't really been linked to any quarterbacks during the first phase and the second phase now of free agency. So all signs seem to be pointing to Tennessee taking Cam Ward with the first overall pick. All right. Now, where does that leave the Giants then? Cleveland is kind of the wild card here. Now, Cleveland, obviously, they traded for Kenny Pickett. I don't know if Pickett is going to be their long-term answer or if they're going to maybe look to add Shedeur Sanders. But here's where it gets interesting. if Cleveland takes Abdul Carter, which is, we can't rule it out, then I suspect the Giants may go with either Sanders or Hunter, probably with a lean towards Sanders, because if Sanders is on the board, can you realistically, you know, turn it down if you don't have your quarterback in place? I think it can, because I think that argument, to be honest with you, is like saying, well, now you've got to shop hungry. You've got to shop in a certain market, as opposed to listening to your board and your price list and your budget, because, you have this need. Um, so if I were the Giants, I would go best available. So anyway, the hope is that Ward and Sanders are both off the board. If that is the case, I have a feeling, based on, again, that it's going to be Abdul Carter for the Giants at number 3. Now some of you might say, well, what about Travis Hunter? He's more versatile. He could help in multiple ways. Yes, true. But the signing of Paulson Adebo, the bringing the return of Darius Slayton, folks, as if you would ask me about this before free agency, I would have said absolutely Hunter, no questions asked. Now I'm not so sure. I think, the Giants, as they continue to want to improve that defensive front, I could see them very easily going for Abdul Carter. I think he would be the pick at number 3. Now, what about quarterback if he is the pick? I don't think the Giants would do this. I would do it if I were them, but I don't think they will. I would look to trade back into the bottom of the first round. And if Jackson Dart is on the board, if Jalen Milroe is on the board, maybe look to get one of those guys. Now, I've seen mock drafts where Shedeur Sanders has actually fallen down to the bottom third of the first round order. So who knows, if Sanders does fall down and you're the Giants and you're looking to trade back into the bottom of the first round order, maybe you get Shedeur Sanders there. So there's a couple of different ways the Giants can play this. They could also just stay put, obviously. Now, a wild card is Kirk Cousins. And again, I believe it was Josina Anderson who reported that the Falcons have gotten some calls about Kirk Cousins. Because look, Cousins is not going to play as long as Michael Penix Jr. is healthy. And he's a rather expensive backup. So could the Falcons, in cooperation with Cousins, who has a no trade clause in his contract, could they maybe work on a trade to send him to one of these quarterback needy teams, whether it be the Browns or the Giants? I don't know, folks. I mean, Cousins wouldn't be a bad option, but at what cost? What cost would it come at? I'm almost positive if they were to do a trade like that, it would certainly cost them pick number 3 overall, unless somehow, Joe Shane could convince them to take, a 2 and maybe the second of their third round picks that they have. I don't know if that would be enough to get it done. Okay, so let's talk finances now. Theoretically, again, if the Giants were to acquire Kirk Cousins from the Falcons, they would not be on the hook, obviously, for the prorated signing bonus. That would get charged to the Falcons. But they would, however, have to pay out the base salaries. And the base salaries include 27.5 for this year, 35 for 2026, and 35 million for 2027 with no guaranteed money. So 2026 would be the out there. Now, also, for what it's worth, according to Over the Cap, it looks like Cousins' salary was guaranteed for his 27.5 million base salary is guaranteed, which again wouldn't be an issue. And then he hit another clause where 10 million of his salary next year would be guaranteed. So truthfully, folks, I mean, if the compensation for a trade, if it came down to a trade with the Falcons for Cousins, I don't think it would be a horrible move, financially speaking, because it would still give the Giants a backup quarterback option, or not a backup, a veteran bridge option, which they can move on from. after, 2 years, which again should be enough time to get a rookie up and running if they do take one. So just, I don't know that the Giants will trade for Cousins, if they'll inquire for him. I don't even know if the Falcons want to trade him. They have said they don't. But you know what? The right offer might make people move. And I think as we get closer to the draft, there might be something to keep an eye on if Rodgers continues to drag his feet and if, nothing gets done with Russell Wilson. So that's just, I think, an emergency situation for the Giants to explore. All right, folks, coming up next, the Giants did quite a bit in free agency, but there's still some remaining needs. Where might they fill these remaining needs in terms of premium draft assets? We'll talk about that right after this.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. In this segment, the Giants did a lot in free agency. They filled a bunch of needs, but there are still some very important spots on this roster that they haven't really filled. And these are potential spots where they will most likely, if you're using logic, you can most likely say that they will use premium draft assets to fill these spots. Now, by premium, I mean a day 1 or a day 2 pick. So basically rounds 1 through 3. And the Giants, as you all know, didn't have an extra overall pick this year, right? So they actually have 4 picks in the top 100. So that should be enough for them, you would think, to add some talent to these other positions. All right. So look, we all know quarterback is a position that they've got to fill. And it's a great candidate to fill with a premium asset. We've talked about that. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Where I am going to spend a lot of time, though, is in the trenches, both sides of the ball. And I'm going to start with the offensive line. Let's start with tackle. All right. The Giants are set at left tackle with Andrew Thomas, although he's got to shake this injury bug problem that he's recently developed. But right now, Jermaine Illuminor is set to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. So unless the Giants are planning to extend him, they don't have right now a guy in the waiting to take over that offensive tackle spot on the right side. And for those of you who are saying, well, what about Evan Neal? I don't think it's going to be him. Evan Neal, by the way, is also entering the final year of his contract, his rookie deal. I do not think the Giants will exercise the option year. And if Evan Neal cannot make the conversion to guard, which, as I've been, saying to you guys all along, is going to happen this year, they're going to work on cross-training him there, then Evan Neal has no value to this team moving forward. So offensive tackle, despite the fact that they added James Hudson and Stone Forsythe, offensive tackle is a glaring need. And I could see them maybe somewhere along the line adding to that position. The offensive tackle class, as I understand it, is not too bad as far as, the quality of depth. So that could certainly be a position. Right now, while we're also on the subject of the offensive line, you can make a case for guard. John Runyon Jr. is set. Right now, over on the other side, they brought back Greg Van Roten on a 1-year deal. I mentioned Evan Neal. They have Jake Kubas, who they're going to continue to coach up. But, are any of those guys the long-term answer? Maybe Kubas. Maybe if Neal plays really well, he could be the answer. I don't know, but I would maybe look to get another guard if I were the Giants. And I know they also have Aaron Stinney, who they brought back, I should say. But again, I just don't think he's the long-term answer for them either. So offensive line, definitely an area, and I'm talking guard and tackle, where I would double dip and I would maybe consider premium assets to fill those holes. Now, defensive line, hands down. I know the Giants added some veteran depth, not on long-term contracts though. Get yourself a good young piece from a historically deep defensive line group, right? Get a good young player, put him next to Dexter Lawrence and let the two of them grow old together and prosper. Okay. Because the Giants, ever since they traded away Leonard Williams, Dexter has been Dexter. He's all world as far as I'm concerned, but he can't do it all by himself. And when he comes off the field, you notice it. So you get a solid defensive lineman that you could put next to him, where if you have to now maybe give Dexter a rest, and you keep the young kid on the field, and maybe there's no drop off in the play. So I think defensive line, despite the fact that the Giants added to that group veteran depth, again, to make sure that they have bodies that they can rotate in, keep guys fresh, much like what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl, as we all saw. I think that has to be an area where they will spend premium depth. Now, the rest of the positions where the Giants can use some additional depth, running back, obviously, I don't think they need to go crazy there. They could probably get away with a day 3 pick. You could make a case for tight end if you want. But again, I'm not so sure that that's high on the list. You maybe can make a case for receiver, but I think they're pretty kind of set with receiver now. Can you make a case for edge rusher? Well, if you get Abdul Carter, you're set there, I think. But yeah, you can make a case for that as being a premium pick, a position where you want to have a premium pick. But again, I think if they get Abdul Carter at number 3, then we're not having that discussion about whether or not they have to spend additional assets on the position, on day 2 or day 3. Safety, I would add another safety if I were the Giants. And cornerback, I think they should be okay with cornerback depth. They're kind of young back there, but I think if you get a good, solid, pass rusher up front, you add more to that defensive front in the form of Abdul Carter, who can make an impact for you, I think you're going to be okay moving forward. So basically the bottom line for the Giants is they can't squander opportunities to dip into the draft class where there is depth, really good depth at positions where they have needs. They did it last year with the quarterback situation. We saw how it played out. Don't make that same mistake twice. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. Again, thank you for tuning in, spending part of your day with us here on Locked On Giants. And listen, before I go, let me just tell you about Locked On NFL Draft, hosted by Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, you can get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day from Parson and Sanchez on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, which you can find on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, I'll see you tomorrow here on the Locked On Giants podcast.